Oh, what was the one about, which one? I just blew it, man. I blew it. I forgot it. Oh, he said, I'm in love with the person she used to be. Nobody, oh, wow. Okay, that was super awkward. So anyways, hey, if this is your first time here, my name is Philip, and this is my awesome and beautiful wife, Erin. And we're super excited to be able to answer some of the questions that you guys gave just a couple weeks ago before your spring break. And so a lot of you wrote down questions. And then tonight, what we did was we just kind of compiled a bunch of them, and we're going to do our best to try to hit majority of the questions. So we might not get to your specific question, but try to listen to some of the answers because we try to incorporate everything, a lot of those questions within our answers as well. And so I figured it would be a great opportunity for you guys to get to hear at least just a few minutes real quick, a little bit about our story and how we got married. So I'll kick it to Erin and let her share a little bit about that.
So we both went into ministry. So I left teaching, started at a church called Biltmore in Asheville, North Carolina. About the same time I started there, he was starting there, but he was an intern, and I was kind of like his boss. So it was kind of cool. But we started just like getting to know each other and started a friendship and everything like that, and eventually became more. And we dated for 7 months. During that 7 months, though, we felt a lot of pressure from the people that we worked with to know if we were going to get married. And if we didn't know, then we shouldn't be together. And so that, on top of the fact that we saw each other every single day, we were with each other pretty much all day. And then if we wanted to hang out that night, we were together, that night. And we couldn't talk about anything but work, really. So that put a lot of pressure on us. And so we ended up breaking up. And the day after we broke up, he got hired on as my boss, as the high school pastor. So I had to deal with that, which was super awkward.
I was calling shots, man.
Yeah. So we broke up for 6 months. During that 6 months, I actually took a job at a church in Charlotte, which was 2 hours away from Asheville. And when I did that, when he found out I was taking that job, he actually got very mad at me. And he wouldn't talk to me. Everyone else congratulated me, but he wouldn't even talk to me. And so eventually it came out that he was like, I kind of still have feelings for you. And so I was like, well, you're going to have to pursue me to Charlotte and prove it. And so I moved on to Charlotte and made him prove that he was actually real and that he actually really did want to be with me. So 4 months after I moved to Charlotte, we got engaged. 5 months, I moved back to Asheville. And then in September, we got married. So
it was the best decision of her life, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it was not a fairy tale story. But
it was a
our
joke.
Story. And yes, the best one.
Well, no, not really. No, that was probably the right decision. Anyways, okay, man, we're going to have a fun night, really. We're going to answer your questions, but I want y'all to know we want this to be fun, too. So we're going to be authentic with you guys. We really are. We're going to open up. We're going to be honest with y'all. And so I hope that, we hope, and our prayer has been that just this time of us getting up here and just answering some questions when it comes to dating and just relationships, we hope really that's just beneficial for you guys, because every one of us is either been out of relationship, pursuing a relationship. Right now, maybe you're questioning, you don't really know if what you are with this person, or you already are in a relationship. And so much of our life is about relationships. And so that was the goal of this whole Dateable series and why we chose it, just because when it comes to relationships, it's really important. It really is. So anyways, with all that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump into the first question. So first question is, how do you do it God's way? This is one of the predominant questions that we got. How do you do it God's way? I'm going to pass this to Erin.
Well, first off, I truly believe that before you even get into the relationship with that person, you both need to be on your own spiritual journey. You both need to be in church, and you guys both need to be pursuing God and be pursuing that relationship with Him on your own. But then once you guys get into that relationship, to do it God's way, you need to be consistent in going to church. So make sure that you're getting involved in church. Make sure that you're getting involved in community. Coming to things like this and college nights and having your small groups, that's really good because you're getting to build those relationships with people who believe the same things that you do. Make sure that you guys stay in the Word. Constantly feed yourself the word every single day. And one thing I can't stress enough, because I did it, he did it, make sure that you have mentors. Make sure that you guys have someone who's older than you, a little wiser than you, who's going to speak truth into your life and who's going to ask you the hard questions. Because if you're not being held accountable in your relationship, you're more likely to make some mistakes. So if you have a mentor being like, hey, are you having sex? Then it's a little harder to look them in the eye and be like, no, even if you are. So make sure that you have a mentor that's holding you accountable and just someone that you can talk to.
And I would say that you gotta have your own individual identity and your own growth in your relationship with God, because a lot of times what we'll do is you get into a relationship, and we understand like why this is so easy. It's just next thing you know, you want to spend all of your time with that person. The problem is what you end up doing is whenever you get into a relationship and you start to spend a lot of time with this person, you feel like sometimes you can lose your own identity because now your identity is so wrapped up in that person and spending time with that person. So my whole thing is this: when God created Adam, we talked about this a few weeks ago. He gave him a role and he gave him responsibility. You know, he made sure that Adam knew his identity first and foremost before he ever gave him Eve. And so for the guys and also for the ladies, you have to make sure that you have your own identity. Your identity is not wrapped up in the guy that you're dating. First, it needs to be wrapped up in God, your growth with God, and your own individual responsibility that God has and your identity in him. It's really important. All right, funny question. What was our worst date? What was our worst date? Quick one. So I'll remember this. She was so mad at me. So it was Valentine's Day. So I told her, I was like...
I didn't know he was going to ask this question, but yeah, he's right.
Okay, so we threw a few questions in here she didn't know. So it was Valentine's Day, and
our first married Valentine's Day.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Really, our first Valentine's Day.
So even when you get married, just y'all hear this cliche, like you're not supposed to quit dating. Okay, so even though I'm saying this as a date, because even in marriage you still need to date and all that stuff. So here's the deal. So I'm terrible at when it comes to like planning stuff like together for us. I always say I'm going to, and then I never do. Any guys out there? Any y'all with me? Okay. Crickets. Greg, don't go shaking your head over there, man. Jeez, all this condescension going on. So anyway, I told her, I was like, oh, I got a great day planned. I got a great day. Well, the day comes, and I was like, I had nothing, man. Absolutely nothing planned. So I was just flying by the seat of my pants. I'm like, man, what am I going to plan? And so we really like the Cheesecake Factory. The problem is the Cheesecake Factory was 50 minutes away from our house. It's Valentine's night. Y'all know, I mean, Cheesecake Factory's a nice restaurant. You know it's going to be busy. So I'm like, well, I'll call the day of, and I'll set a reservation. Well, the problem was she came home, and she's like, what do you got planned? She was so excited because she all had this stuff planned and that gift and all this stuff for me. And I was like, oh, well, I was going to take you to the Cheesecake Factory. She goes, it's Valentine's night. Did you set a reservation? I'm like, oh, crap. So I call them up right then and there. I'm like, hey, I don't know what y'all's wait's going to be, but can I set a reservation? Well, they don't do reservation on Valentine's night. So I came back and I said, yeah, it's 50 minutes away, and we're not guaranteed to get in there because it's Valentine's night. And so, yeah, I'm sorry about that. So she was really mad. And then on top of that, guys, I'm going to just tell y'all, you don't mess with a girl when they're hangry. Y'all know what I'm talking about? When they hangry? Y'all know exactly what I'm saying. Okay, well, she was really hungry, and she was like, I'm just going to order a pizza. The problem was she ordered the pizza. I went to the wrong location. The location that we ordered it from, I ordered it from the wrong location. Let me make sure I say that right. I ordered from the wrong location. So the location I went to was closest to our house. So I go to that location. I'm like, hey, where's the pizza? Hey, we don't have an order for you. I was like, oh, my gosh. I ordered it from the one that was 30 minutes away. Mind to tell you, it was not the best Valentine's night, if y'all know what I'm saying. So anyways, we'll move on to the next question. Next one is, what are good boundaries to have in a dating relationship? What are good boundaries to have in a dating relationship? So let me say this, and I want to be very clear here. Everything that we're talking about, we are not perfect, nor were we. Even for myself, before I became a Christian and everything, man, I just want you to know, we'll share a little bit more, but I just want you to know we are not sitting up here acting like, man, we had it all together. We did not. Okay, so I want y'all to know, man, it's by God's grace and all of that stuff. I say that just so you understand, too, is like we're real people who had real struggles and everything as well, and still do. But let me say to the gentleman real quick. So a healthy boundary that somebody told me, just to put a clear line, sometimes guys need a clear line. I'm not saying that this is going to be easy. I'm not saying that, but nothing below the neck. Y'all know what I'm saying? Nothing below the neck. That's a really healthy boundary. At least gives you some clear identification, so you know right there, anything below the neck. And so it can get tough. We're not saying this is easy, but there's a verse in 2 Timothy 2:2. It says, "Run from anything that stimulates youthful lusts. Instead, this is what you need to pursue. Pursue righteous living, faithfulness, love, and peace. Enjoy the companionship of those who call on the Lord with pure hearts." I'm going to let Aaron get this a little bit too.
Yeah, so what he said, but also just kind of being aware of like when you're with your significant other and you guys are going out on dates and stuff, hang out with groups. You don't always have to hang out with groups, but it's probably not the best idea if your boyfriend or girlfriend, lives in an apartment, they have a dorm room. Going back to their room, shutting the lights off and watching a movie is probably not going to end the best way. So just like live above reproach and just be wise with some of those decisions. And if you know that, hey, I can't be alone with my girlfriend, then don't get alone with your girlfriend. You have to be aware of your weak points. And girls, I'm going to speak to you. We want to dress up for our boyfriends and we want to look cute, and sometimes the cutest outfits can show a little skin and stuff. And I'm not telling you to wear, a turtleneck and sweatpants on your dates. But, let's just be aware of what tempts them. And just be modest. You can still be cute and you can still be beautiful, and you don't have to, let everything hang out. So just be wise.
All right, next question. How do I not let the person I'm dating or pursuing to become more important than God? Hebrews 11, chapter 11, verse 6 says, "And it's impossible to please God without faith. Anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists and that he rewards those who sincerely seek him." The reason that I chose that verse is because if the majority of your time, I said this a little earlier, if the majority of your time is spent with that person to the point that you're neglecting family, you're neglecting your friends, you're even starting to see your schoolwork and other hobbies and things that you enjoy, starting to see those on the back burner, and all of your time is being so consumed with that person, I would say what's going on is you are taking that person out and you're putting them at a place that was really only designed for God in your life. And so what I mean by what this verse that I love about is this, that it's impossible to please God without faith. So you need to have faith for you to pursue and please God. But this is the part that I really love. Anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists and that he rewards those who sincerely seek him. So the point is this, is making sure that you put him in the right place, because if you put him in the right place in your life, everything else, I'm telling you guys, everything else just seems to fall into place. You give everything the right priorities, and you give everything else the right attention when you put him at the right place in your life. And that's at the center of your life. And we can talk a little bit more about that, but I would just tell you, it's so easy for us to take the person that we're spending the most time with, and what happens is, when they seem to take majority of the time with us, that person is what the Bible would call an idol in our life. And so, go ahead.
I had a college pastor say this once, and it really kind of transformed my thinking. And he said, people think sexual immorality is the biggest mess up in a relationship. But he said what it actually is when you start elevating that person to be far more important, because then you lose sight of what's important. You lose sight and you lose your focus. So if your focus is not God and you start putting your significant other ahead of him, then you're more likely going to make mistakes. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's good. That's really good. Because I think we do live in a world where we think sexual immorality is the worst thing. And it's not, that's definitely something. But idolizing your significant other, that's where it all starts. And girls, I'm just going to speak to you because I know I was guilty of it at one point. If you find yourself talking about your boyfriend in your relationship and that's the only thing you talk about to your friends, first of all, your friends love you, but they don't want to hear it all the time. And second of all, you really need to start thinking, if that's all that you can talk about, then you need to take a step back and think about, What's really important in my life? Because you should be able to have multiple conversations with your friends and your family that doesn't always involve your boyfriend.
Next question. What do you do if you're in an ungodly relationship and then you find Jesus? And so let me make sure that I clarify this when they say ungodly relationship. What I believe that this question is asking is if two people who are not Christ followers are in a dating relationship and one of those individuals in the relationship ends up becoming a Christ follower, now kind of what happens to the relationship? What do you do now if one person in the relationship is a Christ follower and the other person is not a Christ follower? So I just want to clarify if this is your first time to church, or maybe this has been your first time in a long time, just clarifying of what that question really means. Let me read a verse to you, 2 Corinthians 6:14. It says, "Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers, for what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness, or what fellowship has with darkness?" And so what that verse is saying right there is when it comes to relationships, specifically a very intimate and close relationship like what we're talking about here, is saying don't be unequally yoked. And so the old text of this is like somebody, this would be a metaphor to them, is what they used to do with oxen that would, be in an agrarian society back at that time. What they would do is they would put a yoke on oxen so they would make sure that they're going the same way. So the kind of the picture here is saying like you can't be yoked with someone when you're both trying to go two different directions. It's so difficult if you're trying to pursue God and you're trying to pursue Jesus in the sense of you want to be more like him, you want to please him because of your new relationship with him, and the other person doesn't really care about that. You're kind of going in two different directions. But I want you to know too is it's really important for you to value the relationship, the new relationship that you have with Jesus over that previous, or I would say that relationship. It really is. If Jesus really did save you and he changed you and he gave you a new life and forgave you for all those things, man, I just want you to know that that relationship should usurp any other relationship in our life. And so anything you want to add to that? All right. Another question that's not on here. Do you have sex a lot when you're married? Where's my man? Where's JT at? Where's JT at? JT, you want to give me a little shout? Just kidding. Let me just tell y'all, guys, don't get your hopes up. You know what I'm saying?
I was not prepared for this question either.
Hey, guys, don't get your hopes up. Y'all know what I'm saying? I'm just playing. Oh, my gosh. I'm looking like I got stares, man. Good night. Doesn't the Bible say something about, like, don't be throwing stone or the first stones and stuff? Man. Anyways, just kidding. All right, let's go to another question. So, let's go to another one. Can you have sex before marriage? Can you have sex before marriage? Let me say something real quick to that. Yes. Let me clarify what I mean by that. Technically, you could, right? You can. Now, I'm going to give you a biblical perspective of what I mean is that right now, if any of you guys wanted to, who's going to stop you? In that sense. So that's what I mean by technically, you can. Now, here's the thing that I want you to understand, though. Biblically, no. And now let me make sure I say that one, no, because sometimes I know you guys are like, oh, this is why I hate the church. This is why I hate church, because they say no. It's actually not about that, because God really has good for us. He really does have good for us. Here's the thing when it comes to that. Did you know that God actually created you for intimacy? God created you for intimacy. When I say intimacy, I do not only mean physical intimacy or physical pleasure. I don't mean only that. I don't. So what I mean is this. God created us for intimacy. The problem is when we have sex outside of marriage, that starts to destroy the intimacy that we feel. It breaks us a little bit. And so what happens is we don't feel the intimacy that we think that we really desire. So my point when it comes to this, because it is a little bit of a difficult question, but I want you to know this, that God created you for intimacy, and he wants you to experience the fullness of intimacy in marriage. That's his goal, and that's exactly what he wants for us. And the thing is, when we take it in our own hands and we want to gratify all of our physical desires, what really is going on is God is saying, I have so much good for you. Man, in the covenant of a marriage, I have so many blessings for you. Sex is an add-on. Sex is a blessing. It's not just about sex. You were not created just only for that and just to fulfill a physical desire. You were also designed for intimacy, and God wants you to experience that. But the problem is, I stated it before, the problem is when we take that in our own hands and we're not willing to at least, and I'm just saying, we're not willing to wait, we start to break down the intimacy that realistically we are designed for, and that God wants for us to experience. And so it's a tough question, but I hope that clarifies a little bit. If y'all have more questions on that too, I would love to talk more with you guys. Next question is this: if we had sex with our boyfriend or girlfriend, but then turned 180 degrees and pursued purity, will we still marry even with that baggage? I'm gonna let Aaron take this.
No sexual sin is beyond God's forgiveness, and you guys just need to know that. So even if you have already sinned sexually, if it's not beyond God's forgiveness. If you've asked for forgiveness, and you're truly pursuing that purity, then you have to trust that God forgives you. And so I think of it like this: when you ask for forgiveness, you're giving that sin over to God. You're literally handing it to him and saying, God, please take this from me. I am so sorry that I did this. But if you want to hold on to that baggage, that's like you're taking it back from him. And that doesn't make sense. Why would you take something back from him that has weighed you down and bothered you for so long? So that when I, think about that, that's kind of where I come from. Just make sure that you realize that God does forgive you. So there's no point in carrying that baggage around because he has truly forgiven you. It says in 1 John 1:9, but if we confess our sins to him, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all wickedness. So believe it. Believe it in your heart. I know it's easier said than done. I've been there. I was not perfect. We, by the grace of God, were able to abstain from sex before marriage, but that doesn't mean that we got married as virgins, because we weren't. So I know what it's like to carry that baggage around and to feel so guilty about that, because I feel like I didn't have something to give my husband that I should have. But I also know that there's a God who loves me and he forgives me for what I did. And so I handed that over to him, and I didn't want it back. So.
Yeah, and whether or not you let's say you're in a dating relationship right now, whether or not you marry that person, no matter what, we all bring baggage into a relationship, specifically talking about in a marriage. Everybody's going to bring a little bit of baggage, just so y'all know. Everyone's going to bring some. Doesn't matter how awesome she is, doesn't matter how great he is, everyone's going to bring a little bit. Sometimes in the dating relationship, it's easier to cover up. But when you get into a marriage, you uncover a lot of things. And so it doesn't matter. Everyone's going to bring some. But here's the deal. And this is about the gospel. Because did you know that God forgives us? Man, he forgives us. And that is such a great truth that we need to resonate with. Because what happens is we tend to hold on to the baggage. Y'all know that God doesn't? I don't know if you guys know that, but God actually doesn't hold on to our baggage. You know who does? We do. We sometimes cannot even forgive our own selves when the eternal God forgives you for everything. Man, is that not good news? That's amazing news. So when we talk about the gospel is the good news that God forgives us for everything. He takes our guilt, he takes our shame, he takes our bad decisions and mistakes, he takes all of our sin, and then he's like, I forget it. It's already been done with. Why do you keep bringing it up? We bring it up. And so many times I look at that when it comes into a relationship, we bring baggage and we hold on to it. And God's like, hey, I ain't hold on to that baggage anymore. Or you don't need to hold on to that baggage anymore. I've already dealt with that 2,000 years ago. Let's move forward. Let's move forward. I think that's a really important truth for us to realize. Okay. We only got 2 more questions, or just a couple, I think. All right. What's a habit that Philip has that drives Aaron crazy?
Oh my gosh, that's the easiest thing for me.
Oh, Lord.
Guys, he does the grossest thing.
Oh my gosh.
So when
It's not gross.
when he's thinking or like focused, it's like gross.
Yo, I told man,
He
this is
literally,
transparent.
Like, licks his hand and then he like just smells it. And so when we were dating,
Oh my
so
gosh.
so when we were dating and we were driving down the road, I would see him like doing this. But you know, when you're dating, you're like, you don't want to like ask weird questions. So I would just be like, what is he doing? The more comfortable I got with him, I finally one day was like, what are you doing? Like, what is this? And he told me, and guys, I was getting onto him last night. Like, I was in the kitchen, I saw him in the living room, and I'm like, Philip. And he knows as soon as I say his name what he's doing. I get so mad. He's like, dang it, Aaron. But guys, this seriously, it drives me crazy. It's gross. I think it's gross.
Oh, man. We'll just leave it at that. All right, so anyways. All right. Last two questions here. How can I know who is the right person for me? How can I know who's the right person for me? I'm going to answer just a couple, and then I'm going to let Aaron take a little bit. I think, number one, now I'm speaking to the Christ followers here. I'm speaking to the Christ followers. You both got to have a passion for God, and you both got to want to serve God. And also, just quickly, I think there needs to be some compatibility. There needs to be some likes. There needs to be some dislikes. Now, here's the deal. You do not need to try to find somebody who's exactly like you, because guess what? Y'all are going to butt heads, and that person's going to drive you insane because they're so much like you. So you need to find someone who's different, but what I mean is this. There's at least some compatibility that, man, you enjoy being around that person, and there's some common likes and dislikes as well.
Yeah, someone you can be yourself around. I don't know about for guys as much, but I can really speak to the girls, or at least from my opinion, in my personal experience. I would often try to like morph into who I thought he wanted me to be. I don't know if you guys seen the movie Runaway Bride, but if you have, and she tries all the different eggs, I literally felt like that girl at one point, because I was like, oh, I like this basketball team for this guy, and then I liked this basketball team for this guy, you know, and it was like I constantly changed myself, and I didn't really know who I was. So find someone that you can truly be yourself around. And make sure that you guys have fun together, and that you have a sense of humor, like that you guys can laugh at each other. Now, we don't have the same sense of humor at all, but we can still laugh and have fun together. And then, girls, for you specifically, find a guy who's going to encourage your strengths. Because if you guys, each and every one of you, good. You guys have strengths. And find a guy who's not intimidated by those strengths. Someone who's going to encourage you and push you. Because that's what he did with me, and that was something that was like kind of set him apart. So if there's a guy that's like kind of not tearing you down, but doesn't really build you up in your strengths, then that's not really a good sign.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. Seriously.
And just one last thing, first of all, follow God's leading in that. Follow God's leading completely. And also, don't rush it. Don't rush the relationship. And I know, like, in the Christian world, sometimes they're like, hurry to the altar. And that's what we experienced when we first dated. But don't rush it, because there's going to be different seasons throughout a relationship, and you're going to get to see them experience and kind of do, like, so for Philip, like, I needed to know how he handled conflict. And that's an important thing. You need to see how they truly handle conflict. Because for the first few months, you can put up the front like, oh, I'm not really that crazy. But after a while, your crazy's going to come out.
That person's crazy.
And so make sure that that you guys don't rush it. Don't rush into things.
This is such a great question. I don't know which one of y'all wrote this, but I don't know if it's a joke or not, but like, this is the last question, then we're done. Aaron, why'd you marry Philip?
Well, so we got it, and I literally laughed out loud, because I was like, is this like a diss on you? But then I was like, you know what? I'm actually going to turn it around.
I'll tell you why, because I'm irresistible. That's why, you know what I'm saying?
It's that shiny head.
Oh!
I'm just kidding. That was not.
Let's steer away from the ball jokes, okay? I'm very insecure about it.
So, why did I marry Philip? Well, first of all, guys, it was not love at first sight. Like, it was not saying he's not attractive. No, I'm not saying that he's not attractive. But what I'm saying is...
That's good.
What I'm saying is, when he walked into, like, the conference, I remember, like, the first time I saw him, but he walked into the conference room, he had, like, this Ohio State sweatshirt on, and he was
Swag.
like, he literally comes in the middle of a meeting and was like, oh, because Ohio State had won the national championship.
That's right, baby, chance.
And I just remember being like, you just interrupted our meeting. Like, who is this guy?
It wasn't that important.
And so it took me a while to actually like him like that. But we started that friendship, and like one day he brought me an Airhead like randomly, and I was like, oh, that's kind of sweet, And then he had this like pug Beanie Baby.
So much game.
And guys, he's not smooth. He was
Pug
not
Beanie
smooth.
Baby.
And he would start hiding it in my office. So I'd like open my drawer and like that pug Beanie Baby would be there. And I opened my cabinet one day and it was there. And so that was like a little game he started playing. And as stupid as it sounds, it was also like, oh, that's kind of cute. But obviously he was not smooth. Our first date, first of all, he didn't even want to pick me up because it was his first time in a Christian relationship. So he didn't know what to do. So he didn't want to pick me up. And so our boss literally was like, you're going to pick her up, and you're going to walk up to her apartment door and get her. Like, because he was like, you can just meet me at my car. Like, I mean, really. And so then he took me to the mall where we picked out khaki cargo shorts for him.
Yes!
Like,
she hates them. They're so nice,
what
man.
we did for our first date. I picked out
It's
shorts
from American
for him.
Eagle, too.
But honestly, like we started out as friends, and we had that foundation. And so from there, it moved on. And he wasn't like any of the other guys I had dated. So, I knew that he had a heart for Christ. And honestly, like I just said, he pushed me in areas that I didn't really see a lot in myself. Like, he encouraged me. He was like, hey, you're really good at this. You should do this. And I'm like, what? Excuse me? Like, and I still have that issue today. Like, he'll tell me I'm good at something, and I'm like, okay. And I'll, like, completely brush it off.
It drives me nuts.
But honestly, we had a lot of respect for each other. Even through our breakup and having to work together and everything, we still remained friends, and we still had a lot of respect for each other, and that went a long way. And ultimately, he made me better. And his strengths are absolutely my weaknesses. And whether he likes it or not, my strengths are his weaknesses. Mm-hmm. So, it's just, that's really, it wasn't, our story was not this fairy tale story where I saw him walking down the aisle, and I was like, or the aisle, the hallway.
Girl, you jump in.
The hallway.
Quick.
The hallway, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to marry that guy. Because it took me a while to think that I would marry this guy. But God, everybody's story is different.
Everybody's story is different. That's right.
And that's what you got to think about.
So really, just to boil it all down, what she's saying is that I'm really awesome.
Let's not ruin this moment.
That's what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? Thank you. Yeah. That's right. I needed something there, man. Okay. All right. I'm going to pray, and then just a couple quick announcements. And then I know it's about 9:30, but I want to make sure I explain why we do small groups, okay? So just hold on real quick. Let's pray, and I'll explain a few things. Father, thank you for